Check, 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 check. Hello, my name is Michael Wickerson, and I'm into the final run, assisting with a new MGSM project that's happening internationally, and certainly preparing for the Grasshopper portion of my course at the Kansas City Art Institute. And this is going to be the final run for this week to try and get all of my scripts, the condensed sections of my scripts, out as a video tutorial how to make them, but certainly how to interact with them. And that way, when I'm meeting with people, they can actually use their time wisely, have some problems with the scripts, some creative ideas and derivatives of those scripts, and I'll be able to assist them as best I can. We're on to number 8 from the master scripts, I think still in the first section, and we're flying through the params math sets. And I'm jumping ahead a little bit after doing the list section and the 7 script list sets list. And I'm looking at a wonderful video that was produced by BIM Corner. And there's a little bit of stuff coming in from Daniel Kristev, who's a peer and colleague that I'm working with on D-Dominion, if you're ever interested in D-Dominion development. That's an open source site. It's something that we're thinking kind of each one teach one as an approach. So we'll just start. It's probably a Daniel Kristev technique of constructing points from a grafted X coordinate in a series going from start 0 to whatever you want with a step and a count of 10. So you're basically producing that, and I graphed it again as a move in the Z, and you'll find that that literally just produces a wonderful graph. So I think I'll jump into perspective view and slide it over, and this is a little difficult to see because I have so many going on, but it's a numbered point grid system that's 3-dimensional, and that's probably a little too much on 10 count. So let's just simplify that and bring that down to 3, and that might be something we can wrap our head around as a count. So you see how that's actually ordered. And then through BIM and certainly some other PathMapper scripts online, and maybe one of my own, you can see that there's a point list brought to those. And then using the PathMapper node, which is tucked up in the trees section. If you haven't used it, use and understanding of PathMapper is an incredible tool, but like BIM Corner says, there are some limitations to that. So I've really literally gone through here for those that have jumped into nodes and used the defaults, flat and graph and things like this, reverse. You can do the same by dragging out a PathMapper node, and then as soon as you hook something into it, you can hit create null mapping, and you'll see the basic null mapping that happens from the tree structure that's currently existing. And to see that what's currently existing, you're going to get in the habit of using PathMapper and seeing exactly what you have. So you have an A and B here with a number on the number of items on the list, and it's telling you have 9 branches with 2 items on each. So this is basically a default to just say, here's what's coming in and here's what's coming out. But there's a chance to double click on here and get in and play a little bit with this. And there's some great videos online, and I have some visualization here as I go through. I think I'll open up each one separately and you'll see what happens. This one's doing nothing and showing you the exact data that's coming out as a tree system in a panel tool, and also how it's represented as a tree. If you want to double click, you can see what's coming out as a param viewer. Then there's some defaults that will actually flatten, and the PathMapper here, which I could change the name to, is the flatten tool, which takes everything on the list and just numbers at 0. So if I go into here and take this item off and turn the preview or disable that one, and then I come into this one, and I don't want to disable this because I actually want to see the preview of what's on there, but that will always preview the same one as a numbered list. So I guess I will leave it off. Jumping in here and turning this enabled on, seeing what happens in flattened data, you'll see you take all those items of branches, all those things on each of the levels of this tree, and flattens it to every item stuck in a one bucket, kind of like picking the cherries off a tree and throwing them into a bucket. I think without the visuals, I could probably just continue. And let's slide into here and enable that one. And grafting is exactly the same thing. You'll see our initial list. Maybe I will go back up to it and leave it on. Right here by enabling, you'll see that you had 2 items on each of those lists, or actually 3 items on each one of those lists represented by these red spheres, and now it's taken each one of those spheres and give them their own branch. And this is pretty basic stuff to wrap your head around, and I think if you could understand the flattening and the grafting to start, you're not just going in the nodes and using those defaults, you're actually understanding what the data and the data tree is doing. Now it gets really funky and really complex, in my opinion, very quickly. So this is one that actually you can go into the PathMapper and simply take the initial path that was there, which was A and B, and decide to take all of those items. And if we scroll down here, you'll see I've taken them and made it on a default, I believe, not to it, yeah, it's trimming the data to say, I don't want those final branches, and I actually want to back them off one. In the visualization of that, you can see that's exactly what it did. So the initial branch here, you've now said, let's get rid of one of those rows or one of those branch structures that shows you we're going to here, and take all of those items and put these three, which have 3 each, onto one branch. Let's take these 3 that had 3 items each and put them on another branch. And let's take these 3 and put them on this branch. So you've literally just taken all those offshoots of branches and pulled them back to that branch that was coming out. So I guess really to have an understanding of that is 3 branches, so 3 branches on each, and we simply pull back those items to the end of this branch, pull back the items to this branch, and pull the items to this branch. If you don't know me, I'm a very analog person. I've been making sculpture and foundry for a long time. I like to use my hands, and being on these computers and watching how people translate, a lot of times I have to change it into a visualization. And just a side note, there's a wonderful forum, a YouTube series called Visual Math, and I absolutely love it. I think this is worth bringing that all in the Grasshopper. Now here's one. If I jump in and I hit this and hit enable on, you've got an ability to go in and take the item count, which is fairly interesting. And if I had shown you what's happening here, and sorry to jump around, grab the visualization tool down here, and instead grab these as points, you'll see it reversed it. And that's a default reverse, which has a very nice scripting tool right here of saying, let's take the item count, which was the last, that would be, the item count would have been the last information coming here, 3 on each branch, and reversing the order of that. And that's literally what happened. We went from 0, 1, 2 and took all the branches and reversed them with this very interesting tool. And that still has the same looking data structure, but of course it's in reverse order. The next one is actually a path index to kind of understand that. So I'll load that one up. And now we're getting into BIM's ability. And I would say watch the video if this is kind of confusing. Keep in mind that I'm just putting this out because I will be running over these things live in very short, hopefully getting through them in 5-6 hours, flying through all of the ribbon tools. Now here's one as well that takes the path index and does an interesting thing to it. Takes A and B and finds you the path index and simply puts them back onto a data tree structure of 9 series with, let's just count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and brings back the items that are on this list. And that's the use of using that. When you come in here and you see these little things down here, the reason I'm doing this is because I want to understand these little shortcuts that I can use for the path index, the path count, and the item count. And you can use those as a kind of scripting language to find out what exactly they do. So path index has this visual, and I think I'll just jump in here. I'll grab this path count, and you really make this out of the param viewer. As you'll see, I've taken it and said, okay, what is the path count, which is kind of a flattening of the data again, and what's happening with that tool. And then you could actually do things like multiply and divide these things by certain things. So when I grab this one and pop it in, I'm going to have the path count that's on here, and I can divide it by 3. Let me just get this popping up right here. I have to make it to enabled. You'll see what we ended up doing is taking the path count on a param viewer. I'll try and show how this is different. That we just divided the path count by 3, and we end up with a 3 indicated here as a number, as opposed to when I did this, we ended up with 9 as the path count, because it's just giving you that number, and you want to list that. And you can manipulate that data. So the visualization and the logic is a little different to what you're ending up doing, but those are powerful tools, like I said, that make this get complex very quickly and see what it ends up doing. So I'm going to leave that for when I actually have a live discussion and go into it a little bit more and certainly answer some questions about it. If we go down here, and I'm just going to reset that to this count, we're going to grab this one, which is an example of jumping in here and grabbing the data and starting to think, okay, what happens if I reverse the item count and if I reverse the item count on B? what does that do to the actual data? And if you end up looking in here and seeing the visualizations, you might find that's very interesting to grab a visualization tool of what's happening. And let's take this one and slide that one in as the points. So you've got these different numbers indicating in case you want to line these up to different data structures. I can divide those points, obviously the same, but it's doing a count right through all of the points. And then if I grab this one, you see I can have another type of item point list as to what's happening. So why would you end up using this? Probably the best example is so you can start scripting and dividing and flattening and getting your points in order, playing with the units, and they're still staying fairly structured here, that you can start to move certain points where you're not moving other points. And if you think of these as kind of mailboxes to unit apartment buildings on floors of a building, you can actually start to grab some geometry between them. It is fairly abstract to wrap your head around it and then find applications for how it's what's actually going on. And I regret that it does sound, in many cases, that I'm talking kind of in circles with this because I'm not really taking the visualization away too much. So let's grab a point visualization here. Let's see what we have. I'll take this one and put it disable. We'll take a look at this point count and take that to disable. And then you can see we have a point count here, and this is where Daniel Christow really runs making lines. And it probably would, maybe the best thing to do, and I'm kind of jumping in here a little late, would be to grab a polyline through these points, which would give you a sense of what's actually happening. So you see the lines in this direction, you see the lines in this direction, and you see the lines in this direction. So instead of trying to read the numbers and understand what's happening, that's a technique where using the item count and playing around with reversals and manipulating the data in the path mapper, you can really gain some nice control. And of course, that gets more and more complex, that if you're not following the param viewer to understand these things, and the tree isn't doing it for you, and sometimes you just want to take those points and really drive them by a polyline through them. And that's really where I visually have come into contact with, not logically figuring it out from what's being told is happening, but actually getting in there and finding it out visually what's happening in my structure. And I think these are nice little scripts that you can pocket away and maintain and start to apply them to different point grids and find out where your shapes change, especially if these are interpolated curves and lines. If you don't want to use a polyline, you want to use a NURBS curve, say you stagger and lift things, you're producing curves, and very interesting curves, computationally defined, and then you loft through those. And so I'm only revisiting the path mapper because it is a very complex and powerful tool to what you end up using, and BIM Corner does end with some limitations. The main one being if you get something set, but you change the data structure coming in away from, say, an AB for all these instances, and you introduce in here a rotation or another level of that data structure, so C and D are introduced, that breaks all of this geometry that's coming out of it, and you literally have to go back in, do your null mapping, and reset. So that's kind of like a very powerful tool that has a very powerful kind of a nemesis built within it. So I'm just going to leave that. I'm sorry to ramble on a little bit throughout the middle of that, but it was really a transition of why I give credit to BIM Corner and Daniel Christow, because I think both of them have ways of interpreting the path mapper online, and it's worth watching some of their videos and finding out which you have a sensibility to in understanding what's going on. I hope that makes sense. And I hope you will gravitate to one side or the other, and I can direct you in some of the answers you're seeking. Thanks for watching.